All right, everyone, welcome to today's newest episode of Heal Thyself. Thank you for joining, rating, reviewing, subscribing. We have a packed show. Been waiting for a very long time to do this water show, and it's so big that we needed to split it into two shows. So we have part one coming now, covering all things water. Part two, we'll talk about what's going to go in there. We have a water expert coming in as our special guest. So without further ado, let's get to talking about water. All right, everyone, as I mentioned, today's Knowledge Bomb is going to be on all things water. Let me just jump right into it because we know that this is a pillar of health and it can't be overstated. Water, water, water. There's a reason why I wake up in the morning and I grab water first thing and start chugging it, right? Water is life. It is essential in our body's reactions. We are made up of majority of water. So we have to understand, where do we get our water? How do we clean our water? Is all water created equal? And why is our water contaminated the way it is? So let's get some empowering information so we can make some informed decisions, okay? So if you look back on my Instagram, one of my first very posts was on water for this very particular reason, because of the importance in our overall health. And I mentioned it can't be understated. What we need to know particularly is how we can do better with our water intake. So let me give you some tidbits. Only 2.5% of the world's water is considered fresh water. Okay. In America, about 40% of the rivers and 46% of our lakes are polluted. All right. 3 out of 4 houses in the US have tap water containing contaminants that exceed safety limits. Right? About 21 million Americans drink water that violates U.S. health standards. So a 2017 investigation into about 680,000 water quality and monitoring violations from the EPA showed some astounding results. As many as 63 million people, nearly half the United States, were exposed to potentially unsafe water more than once during the past decade. Largely, this is a result of 6 decades of industrial dumping, farming pollution, and water plant and distribution pipe deterioration. Did you know actually by this year, the average age of America's water pipes are going to be about 45 years old? This is a very specific factor for the contamination of our water. And about 600 towns in the United States have pipes more than a century old. So as far as unsafe water violations, some of these places that needed water reform or a change in these violations that were consistently being shown took up to 2 years to fix the issue. And also, some towns had up to decade-old violations by the EPA, and they're still getting contaminated water. So when it comes to water, these legal standards don't necessarily equal that it is safe, right? The EPA has not set new tap water standards in almost 20 years. And some standards are more than 40 years old, right? But think about how much has changed in the industry and water contamination since, because those industries change rapidly. Lots of time, the worst water that we see are in small communities, poor communities, and minority communities, right? And you don't believe me, look how long it took Flint, Michigan to get clean water, about 5 to 6 years. I'm going to give a particular example. This whole talk is not about PFAS, right? These are forever chemicals. But I want to talk about PFAS and how it relates to water quality so you can get a microcosm of what's going on. So PFAS are just one of the many chemicals in water known as forever chemicals. They're resistant to breakdown, and they come from industries like Teflon or Scotchgard, right? All of these things that are water repelling. And they've been linked to cancers, we know that, liver damage, low birth weight, and a multitude of other health problems. The EPA says 110 million Americans are contaminated with PFAS from the water. But an environmental working group laboratory investigation reveals that it was far, far too low. They found actually that PFAS were in dozens of United States cities and major metropolitan areas, the top being Miami, Philadelphia, New Orleans. And some of the other cities having higher amounts also are like Washington, D.C., that was up there. But the results confirm that the number of Americans exposed to PFAS have been dramatically understated by the EPA. And the Environmental Working Group's results actually are in stark contrast to nationwide sampling by most public water systems mandated by the EPA between 2013 and 2015. In the 34 places where the Environmental Working Group test found PFAS contamination has not been publicly reported by the EPA or state environmental agencies. So it's like the EPA missed it, or didn't report the proper findings. So if you look into this and you do some research, you'll find some really good articles out there. There's a really good one by Reuters. And they're saying, quote, the EPA has known since at least 2001 about the problem with PFAS in drinking water, but has so far failed to set an enforceable nationwide legal limit. The EPA said early last year that it would begin the process to set limits on two of the chemicals, PFOA and PFOS, right? So there's no regulation on this chemical. They've known about it since 2001. It is absolutely connected to many diseases, and it's in our water, and they admitted on the low end, 110 million people are exposed. Furthermore, there's another quote. In 2018, a draft report from the Office of the United States Department of Health and Human Services said the risk level for exposure to the chemicals should be up to 10 times lower than the 70 parts per trillion threshold that the EPA recommends. The White House and EPA tried to stop this report from being published, right? And I agree, there is a need to be stricter regulation on PFAS, regulated by the EPA, right? So the EPA is putting 70 parts per trillion, but actually the Environmental Working Group is saying 1 part per trillion is the strict standard level of PFAS because they're so toxic and they don't go away from nature. They don't break down, they last forever, unfortunately. And we know contaminated drinking water can lead to gastrointestinal disease, neurological disease, immune dysfunction, hormonal disruption, birth defects, developmental delays in children, and cancer. So now you have an idea overall who's protecting your water and how loose those regulations are, just like the cosmetics part of it. As how loose those regulations are, let's look at why it's basically contaminated in the first place so you understand what's happening. All right, what are the main sources of water contamination? Well, we get pollution from rainfall, mining, which is a huge source of heavy metal contamination, animals, right, a huge source of bacteria, viruses, parasites, and other microorganisms, the petroleum industry, right, that's crude oil and petroleum byproducts that are getting in the water. Agriculture is one of the main sources of herbicides and pesticides. The medical industry, we know, is a main source of pharmaceuticals in our water. Industrial byproducts, about 70% of industry waste is dumped into bodies of water, responsible for heavy metals, semi-volatile organic compounds like refrigerants, resins, plastics, adhesives, also that we know has health risks. Inorganic nonmetallics like chloramine, chlorine, chloride, fluoride, right? Sewage, that's pathogens and microorganisms, right? About 1.2 trillion gallons of sewage are dumped into U.S. water annually. What about landfills? Sure, responsible for microorganisms, pharmaceuticals, heavy metal runoff. Water treatment plants, all right? So although they're removing these contaminants to their standard, which in my estimation is way too high, but in the contaminants on their standard, we're also putting in inorganic nonmetallics like chlorine and fluoride, which shouldn't be in our water. So as far as tap water, I don't believe this should be an option for you or your children, right? There are standards for water, but once it leaves the treatment plant, as I mentioned, but to make sure that you don't become acutely sick from drinking it. That's the standards, right? Still, the water contains a whole slew of contaminants, which we don't want to be exposed to daily, right? As a result, there still are contaminants in there. Now, as a rule of thumb, for me, I recommend usually about half your body weight in ounces per day minimum of water. But imagine cumulatively drinking that much water, not even counting if you're working out or sweating and working outside or something, cumulatively putting that water together over time, and it's tap water. Because day in and day out, we know that you're exposed to microbes in the water, right? Pharmaceuticals like antidepressants, birth control, hormone disrupting medicines, pesticides, herbicides, PFAS. Remember I mentioned the forever chemicals, which are way too high, nitrates, fluoride, chlorine, and their byproducts, heavy metals, microplastics, right? As a whole, that's in our water, that's in our tap water. Certainly if you're immunocompromised or you have children or infants or you're pregnant, water quality even becomes more important. So the Environmental Working Group has an awesome tap water database, right? Again, I said, remember, legal does not mean that it is safe, right? It does not mean that it is safe at all. Getting a passing grade from the federal government does not mean that water meets the latest health guidelines, okay? So Environmental Working Group health guidelines fill in the gap completely in these outdated government standards. Remember, I talked about this. Some of them haven't been updated for 40 years. The federal government's legal limits are not health protective is exactly what I've been saying. So this is really cool. You go to their website, you type in your zip code, right? This is the Environmental Working Group tap water database. You type in your zip code and you get your results for your town. The Environmental Working Group's drinking water quality report shows the results of these tests conducted by the town water utility and provided to the Environmental Working Group or by town board control or their state department or the U.S. Department, the U.S. EPA Enforcement and Compliance History Database. So they're gathering information both on a state and federal level about what's going on in the water in your town, and they're reporting it back to you. So I did it on my town. Right? So I typed in my hometown in New Jersey and I saw where I grew up basically. And what I found was 31 contaminants in the water and 14 exceed Environmental Working Group guidelines. The first is arsenic. I talk about arsenic all the time. This is why I do these heavy metal reviews, because arsenic is a really nasty heavy metal, right? One of the worst potential effects being cancer. What I found in my hometown, it was 71 times higher than it should be. That is the Environmental Group's healthy guideline. And this utility had 0.285 parts per billion, right? And the Environmental Working Group's healthy guideline is 0.004 parts per billion, 71 times higher than their healthy guideline. What about another nasty chemical, bromodichloromethane? This is a potential effect is cancer also. It's found 159 times higher than the Environmental Working Group's healthy guideline for this utility. And then this one being the highest of all, total trihalomethanes, right? TTHMS. The potential effect being cancer down the line, and we see 336 times the Environmental Working Group's healthy guideline at the utility in my hometown. So that was really cool to see overall and shows the need for water filtration, right? And it's interesting to see me living in LA now, and my town in Venice had less contaminants than did my small town in New Jersey. So again, I mentioned, remember, small towns, minority towns, low-income towns have been shown to have worse water quality. So I would urge you all, go on that website, type in your zip code, and check it out. All right, so that's the knowledge bomb section for this water. But now let's do a product review and go over some water filters, right? There's different prices for water filters. What should you have now? What should you have later? Should you invest? Is it worth it? I'm gonna give it to you all. So today's knowledge bomb is going to be on water filters, which one you should get, which one you should invest in, and everything in between. So I spoke about bottled water already in the past. I spoke about BPA and the toll it takes on the environment and just the overall cost. So bottled water, I'm not going to talk about in this product review segment. I want to talk about the water filter. So there's different types of water filters. And I'm going to preface, I have no affiliation with any water filter company. I am speaking clearly from an objective standpoint, and I will mention the one that I use. No water filter out there removes all the contaminants, and remember, they all need maintenance, right? So one of the most popular design for water filters are the activated carbon ones, right? Activated carbons basically use activated charcoal in their filters, right? And you can also get it in air filters. They use activated charcoal too. But it removes some of the nasties by drawing the nasties to them and then holding them in their pores, right? And you basically replace them once all the pores in the pockets get filled up. And we know activated charcoal works with food poisoning in a similar way, and that's because it's a large surface area. It's able to attract and hold in those toxins, right? So according to the EPA, activated carbon is the only filter technology that is recommended to remove all 32 certified organic contaminants, as well as 14 pesticides, including glyphosate, and 12 of the most common herbicides. So Brita is a very popular activated carbon one. It's probably the cheapest one. So what I say is this, look, if you're going to start with a filter and you're really, really on a tight budget, then Brita will be better than nothing, right? It filters about 30 contaminants. It does not filter out fluoride, which is, for me, is very huge, especially if you have children. I do not like the quality of plastic that they use. I worry about hormone disrupting chemicals. The reservoir, basically what the Brita is made out of, it's called styrene. It's about $35. And again, it would be good for a short-term investment, but I would actually recommend a more comprehensive filter. And again, $35. So what I'm going to say is, if you can, and you still are on a tight budget, there's another filter that is like the Brita, but much better. It's about double the amount of money, but it's still much better. It's actually the one that I had in med school for a few years, and that's the ProPur G2.0 water filter. It's the water pitcher, but I'm speaking about it because it does, for the money, for being double the Brita, it does way more for cleaning out your water, right? It reduces contaminants like heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, monochloramines, pesticides, herbicides, pharmaceutical drugs, fluoride, bacteria, viruses, giardia. And it has an add-on filter that you just have to change for me, I was changing it every few months because I really wanted clean water, but I was also drinking a lot of water. But so to follow what they say, but they remove PFAS also, which is really cool. Again, this is the one that I used in medical school, but my favorite part of all is it gets rid of fluoride. It gets rid of glyphosate and 200 other contaminants as a whole. And they actually share their lab report on their website, their third-party testing, much more transparent, so much better, comparable to a Brita. So if you are on a budget, this is probably the best one you can get at the moment. The downside of it is, again, it's in a plastic reservoir, which is actually why I changed it towards the end of my experience with it, is because I didn't want to use the plastic reservoir anymore, okay? So the one that I have now, in my opinion, is the best one out there, is the Berkey. The Berkey water filter removes 99.5% of contaminants in water, over 200 in total. It shows its independent lab testing. It reflects that they do remove all of that. I like this one a lot. This is the one that I have. It's a little bit more maintenance, a little complicated, but it does the job. I've drank from a lot of the high-end water filters, and for me, this is the best tasting one, but it removes heavy metals like chromium, lead, arsenic, mercury, all the other ones that I speak about, pesticides, all of the ones that we know are causing major health risks, including glyphosate, semi-volatile organic compounds, as I mentioned, like industry refrigerants, resins, plastics, adhesives, all that nasty stuff that I mentioned before. It also removes chlorine, chloramine, chloride, fluoride, all of that crap. Now, the fluoride, I will actually say that to remove fluoride, it's another filter that you use. So there is a particular fluoride filter that is extra cost. Not much more, but it is an extra cost. And then pharmaceuticals, it also removes all of that crap: antidepressants, birth control, Tylenol, ibuprofen, petroleum, gasoline products, crude oil, microorganisms, all of the nasty bugs out there. So yeah, again, I mentioned it is my favorite one. It also leaves some minerals in there for you, but also I don't really count on my water for mineral intake. I count on my food more so, but it's nice that some minerals are left in there. I actually, either way, every time I purify water, I add in minerals. So the one that I have is actually the Travel Berkey, and that's $250. It's good for 1 or 2 people. If you have a family of 3 or 4, you might want to get a bigger one. You can check their website. There are similar systems that purify this just as well, just like the Berkey. The one that comes to mind is a ProPur gravity filter. It's cheaper on the surface, about $190, but the problem is the price per gallon is very different. It's much more expensive than the Berkey's water filter, and the lifespan is much longer, and it purifies faster. So on the surface, again, the ProPur gravity filter is cheaper, but you know, in the long run, you want to make sure that if you're stuck between the two, you just go and get the Berkey one. Okay. All right. Reverse osmosis is it's the OG one. It's really powerful. It uses a membrane to take out the solutes with pressure. And by the semi-permeable membrane, it's allowing in water and holding back all those contaminants, and then you get purified water. It's usually a pre-filter, gets out dirt, sediment, then the reverse osmosis happens, and then a post-filter gives it a final scrub. And then the water is stored in a storage tank. For many people, reverse osmosis is under the sink, so the water staying in that storage tank. It's very effective at removing contaminants like the Berkey. Not all systems are created equal because the semi-permeable membrane has different pore sizes. Approximately, on average, it's 0.1 microns, but it can span from 0.05 microns to 5 microns, right? So the better, probably more expensive reverse osmosis systems are going to have smaller pores. For the most part, they effectively remove all those things that I mentioned with the Berkey. The only concern, I have 2 concerns. One of which being that the holding tank can hold the purified water for a while, right? So think about it. You're purifying the water. It goes through the post filter, and then it's in the holding tank. And then it's continuously bringing in new water. And how long till that holding tank fully empties and new water comes in, or is it just being recycled water? So that's a little bit of my concern with reverse osmosis for sure, although there are many brands that are out there that are really, really good, and the turnover is pretty fast, which is really good. I would really do the research on the brands and ask them those questions. Again, also, pesticides and herbicides aren't always removed by reverse osmosis because some of these pesticides and herbicides are actually, their molecules are smaller than water, so they pass those semi-permeable membranes that allow water in. They get in there like someone sneaking into the nightclub behind someone. So I had this at my last place, so I had reverse osmosis. I used that a little bit, and then I used the Berkey. It came with the place. I will speak about the Aquatrue. The Aquatrue is health professionals' favorite one. It's basically reverse osmosis, but above the counter. So it sort of like hacks the issue with the holding tank and the water being held there for a while because the turnover is much quicker. Doesn't remove as many contaminants as the Berkey. It removes 82 contaminants, but it does include all of the heavy metals and fluoride and PFAS and glyphosate, which is really good. Again, it's regarded as one of the top ones along with the Berkey. For me, I drank from the Aquatrue and the Berkey. I think the Berkey is smoother and it's just better tasting water. But the Aquatrue is a really good one also. My problem with the Aquatrue is this. I think they should consider removing the Triton plastic. That's what the plastic is made out of, is Triton, right? Also, the NutriBullet's made out of it. The Vitamix is made out of it. There's a lot of controversy behind it. It's not across the board accepted to be safe. A lot of third-party testing actually suggests that it does have estrogenic activity, and you can also see studies on this, but the developer Eastman stands by the contrary and saying that it is safe. So for me, it's controversial. I'd rather have it holding in a stainless steel tank like the Berkey. The Aquatrue is about $450. So both companies, though, they provide third-party testing. It's accessible. I love that. You know how I feel about third-party testing. I think it's a good idea maybe putting in your zip code, seeing what contaminants are in your water, then going to the websites of the water filter that you're looking for and make sure that that chemical or contaminant is being removed by the water filter that you want to get. All right. So part 2 will be coming next week. Again, the water show I know would take forever. If you're wondering if I missed anything, I promise you I didn't. The next show, I'll be talking about different types of water, from spring water to distilled water. I'll be talking about hydrogen water, structured water. And then lastly, I will be reviewing the Kangen water system in my product review. So sit tight until next week. And yeah, that's a product review. Cannot wait to get our special guest, Tracy Duhs. She's all about water. She is a water princess, a water queen, and everything in between. So let's get to the special guest segment. All right, everyone, today's special guest, a very, very special one, like I always say, but she's going to drop so many bombs on us because we have yet to talk about water. And I've been waiting to talk about water, but I've been waiting to get her here. Now she's here. This is Tracy Duhs. She's amazing hydration expert. She knows everything in between water and health. And they're going to drop all the bombs for us. She runs wellness retreats, and she's starting her own new podcast called Hydrate Podcast, which we're going to get into. It's amazing. Without further ado, Tracy Duhs. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. All the way from San Diego, not too far, but far enough.
Yeah.
So you've impressed me so much with your knowledge on water.
Oh, thank you.
But like, before we even start talking about that, like, what draws your interest into water? You know, something that is not as sexy as, like, let's say, gut health. Right? Like, people
I
don't.
beg to differ.
No,
Water's very sexy.
I'm talking about the general public. For me, water is like the best.
Yeah.
But tell me, how do you get drawn into that topic or that part of health?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, if we look at it, around 98% of the molecules in our body are water molecules. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I don't know. I'm kind of a science nerd. So I'm like, if we're 98% water molecules, shouldn't we be thinking about that?
As number one.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
But we don't think about it as much. It's like, well, as long as I have this filtered water here, then it must be getting into my cells and osmotically balanced between the fluid outside and the fluid inside the cells, but that's not the case. So
it's not always the case.
No.
So that brings me to my next question. Water quality is super, super important to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Because look, like when I was in college, I didn't think about it. I just whenever I drank water.
Yeah.
And I felt okay. I'm sure it wasn't at my optimal health, but now I'm really paying close attention to how much water I'm taking in. Before we jump into that, how much water would you say that people should be drinking? Does it matter on the size, on the activity, or like, is there a rule of thumb first and foremost that people need to know?
I love that question because there isn't a one size fits all. It's really getting in tune with your body because some people are having microbiome dysbiosis and they're not able to absorb the water. Sometimes the water they're drinking isn't able to get into the cells, or there's a imbalance with the minerals, and so they're not able to absorb it. And we can get into that later, but there is not a one-size-fits-all. You really need to fill your body out because as I've changed the water I've drank, I drink less. I need less water. If I drink too much, that can be a bad thing too, right? So I think I would just say to people, as you get hydrated, you're going to notice you're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy. You're going to sleep better. Your, mental acuity is going to be so much more enhanced, and everything in your body is going to feel supreme. So that's when you know you're hydrated.
Yeah. And it's incredible how much of us are dehydrated.
Yeah,
I'll
it's an
never
epidemic.
I'll never forget like my experience where I was with my friend and she was complaining about a headache all day. And I just stopped her. I was like, did you drink water today? Because for me, I was actually looking for other things too. I was like, well, maybe you ate this. And I was trying to figure.
Right.
And then I stopped myself and I said, did you drink water? And she goes, actually, I didn't. I kid you not. She drank about a liter of water in an hour, completely gone. The headache.
Wow.
But
Simple, right?
The simple interventions of understanding what hydration is, right?
Yeah.
When we're dehydrated, what are some of the things that we may feel?
You're going to feel probably lethargic, tired. You might feel more hungry. A lot of times we think we're hungry and we're actually thirsty.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, one of the first signs of thirst is usually hunger pains. There may be mental fog. Long-term effects are your weight's going to suffer, your sleep patterns are going to suffer, your joints aren't going to feel as fluid.
Every part of the body, again, you said.
98%.
Yeah.
Water molecules, right? I mean, it matters.
For us, you're saying like, knowing when we're hydrated, we have to pay closer attention to our body, how we feel when we're dehydrated.
Yeah.
Which actually, we can constantly be in that state because a lot of us are so good. Most of us are just acclimating to our states and going, okay, this is my normal.
Yeah.
And then, you start hydrating yourself and you go, wow, I feel great. And
right. You don't know how bad you feel until you feel good. You notice that with your health?
Yeah, 100%.
The more I've gotten so optimized, I'm like, whoa, I was in a really bad state 5-10 years ago, but I didn't even know it.
Because we forget about it.
Well, because this is what we do as humans. We acclimate. We're made to acclimate to our environment, right? So whatever it is, if I lived in a desert and I could only have, 16 ounces of water every day, my body would probably acclimate to that, right?
Yeah.
But is it optimal? No.
There's so many different types of water. Bottled water, Brita water, then there's a million other water filters, different types. Let's say I'm drinking Poland Spring, and that's all I've been drinking, and now I'm starting to get into more water and water quality. What things do I need to start looking for first and foremost?
So there's many aspects to water, and the two I like to focus on are the chemical aspect and the physical aspect of water. So let's start with the chemical. We want to make sure that the water is free of contaminants, and that's pretty easy to do. Getting distilled water, reverse osmosis water. You could have water sent to your home. Most people get whatever, sparklets. I would say the best is to get Mountain Spring though, because it's clean of it's free of contaminants. And so you want to start with that. That's an important thing, the chemistry of the water.
Yeah.
Then the next thing is the physics of the water, and that's an important aspect that a lot of us are not looking into. Because when you get water, what do? You look at a label and it says filtered, and you're like, great, this is perfect. I'll take it, right?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, but then we look at, okay, when you drink distilled water or reverse osmosis water alone, a lot of times you're not going to feel completely hydrated. And that's because it may be missing all of the trace elements that it needs. And those trace elements are what help it get into the cell. So that's a really important aspect to the water that I think a lot of people are missing. Mountain Spring water has its own minerals. And that's why a lot of people feel better with Mountain Spring water as opposed to just a straight filtered water.
For Mountain Spring water, just to be clear for people, they're literally getting it from the mountain, right? and filter, is it filtered at all, or is it straight from the mountain?
Yeah, so it depends on the company. I mean, there's like raw living spring water, where
and they go straight from
the
it,
mountain.
Right?
You know, there's things that they have to do to it, but it depends on the company.
Okay, back to the chemistry of it. Like, we want to clean it of contaminants, and I'm such a proponent of that. Like, I have my own water filter, and I'm always mentioning different types of water filters. They all work a little differently, right? Is there one that's better than the other? Like, let's say there's the carbon filters, right? Those are the ones that are like the Brita or the Berkey uses a carbon filter versus reverse osmosis. Do you like one better than the two?
I really am a proponent of the reverse osmosis because I think it does a really good job of cleaning everything out that should be out of there. One thing with the reverse osmosis that you have to be careful with, though, is a lot of the RO machines have a holding tank. And that holding tank, the water will come into the tank, and maybe, say you have a 5-gallon tank and you use 2 gallons that day. There's another 3 gallons sitting in that tank. And then when you don't use that 3 gallons, the next day, another 2 gallons gets put on top of it. So what's happening?
Right.
That water
Mixing
is
up.
sitting
Yeah.
there. And how long has it been sitting there before that tank's been emptied?
Right.
Could it have been years? Think about water. When you have moist, dark place, what's happening there?
A little mildew.
Let's go back to
buildup, mold
microbiology.
buildup. Yeah.
This is a nightmare. So people that are having autoimmune issues, especially autism, any type of compromised system, we want to make sure that they are not drinking out of an RO system that has a holding tank.
Okay. So and are most of those holding tanks the under the sink ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's interesting because the technology of reverse osmosis, those membranes, they cleanse everything out, the chemistry of the water, and it's really nice. And then later they wanted to create the holding tank to make it more convenient, but that's where we've gone wrong. So I love the Aquatrue. That is a reverse osmosis that sits on your counter, and within minutes you put some water in, and then you have the reverse osmosis. And there's no holding tank. It has a little container, but you drink that whole thing during the day.
The turnover is fast.
The turnover is fast. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And you can see what's in there. And so it doesn't have technically this dark holding tank under the sink that you're not thinking about.
Okay, so that Aquatrue is a reverse osmosis system.
Yes.
It's just over the counter.
It's on top of the counter.
Okay,
yeah.
on top of the counter, and you can have a good visible view of what's going on.
Yeah, you can see.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So reverse osmosis basically uses this membrane to take out the solutes.
Yes.
Or to hold back the solutes and purify the water. And the carbon filters sort of do that too, right? Just the mechanism is a little different, but it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's different, but the carbon is absorbing things, but I think personally, I really like to use reverse osmosis because I'm assured it depends on your water system, where you live. Okay, so what's your water source? What's in the water? And then that's going to determine what type of filter you need. So I can't just make a broad statement. Okay, everyone carbon filter is great, or everyone this, but that's why I like reverse osmosis, because it's very comprehensive.
It's like standardized where you know that membrane is going to get rid of all of these things. Okay.
The chemistry of the water will be clean for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you have this clean water, whether you use the Berkey or the Aquatrue, which I know the two like really big ones as far as filters.
Yeah.
Which are a little bit more expensive than the Brita that I had when I was younger.
Right.
But if you have the Brita, is that okay to stick with, or should we like start maybe putting money aside if we can't afford it to invest in something like you said, Aquatrue or Berkey or something like that?
The Aquatrue I think is only like, I don't know, $400, something like that. It's not
compared
a bad
to
price.
like the whole house systems, which are thousands and thousands.
It's not expensive. And I think you change the filters, every 6 months. But honestly, I mean, if we're talking about water and how much of our body is comprised of water molecules, I think it's something that everyone should invest in, right?
We're drinking it every day.
We're drinking it. Yeah, it's like for every molecule that you're putting into your body, you're replacing for something else, right? So 7 years from now, what molecules am I going to be made out of?
As our body turns over.
Yeah.
So for something like the Brita, it's a carbon filter, but it's not getting rid of everything that, let's say, these higher quality ones are.
Yeah.
Which is great. One thing that I love is that you can look up in your municipality the water. There's different websites where you can actually see what contaminants are in the water.
Yes.
I remember checking it for when I was back in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And there was some contaminants in there that are known carcinogens, and some of them were pretty high.
Yes. And it depends on where you live. It's pretty alarming sometimes.
Yeah, it was like an episode of Erin Brockovich, or the movie Erin Brockovich. I was investigating. I was like, ladies and gentlemen, look what we have here.
Exactly.
I was like, very high amounts in our town water. All right, so then you clean up this water, and the minerals are gone. And
Most of them, not 100%, but yeah.
So then people freak out. They're like, I don't want this type of water because it gets rid of the minerals.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Do we replenish them, or should we be getting all our minerals from water in the first place? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it. So if we really want to optimally hydrate, it's essential that we have minerals in the water to bring the structure back to the water. So when I reverse osmosis, cleanse the water, I always add trace elements back into the water. And it's important that these trace elements are balanced and that you get all the trace elements we need, because as we know with our commercial farming, we are missing so many of the trace elements, and it's affecting every almost every system in our bodies. The trace elements are really important. I love to use the ketone minerals because those come from the ocean, so it's already the ocean plasma that's perfectly balanced. It has all 78 trace elements in it.
Nice proportion.
Perfect
proportion.
proportion to what our own blood plasma should be, but it's probably not. If you took your blood right now and we tested to see what trace elements were in there, you know, it would probably not be the 78 trace minerals that are perfectly balanced, right? So when we start taking this marine plasma, the ketone minerals, then it's going to help our body receive all that it needs. But also what it's going to do is it's going to help with that osmotic balance between the extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. A lot of times we talk about cellular dehydration, we don't have enough water in our cells, but as you know, with cancer and stuff, actually that's the cell being too hypertonic, it's too engorged, right? And because we have this imbalance between the extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. So when we have the perfect mineral balance, we can find that we're going to start to be able to balance the fluid, and that's where we find true hydration.
Yes, exactly. So this is what you're saying. Like, you can just drink a lot of water, but never be truly hydrated the way, because you said you drink less water.
I drink less water now.
Stay hydrated.
Yeah. I need less water. My body needs less.
So there's a lot of talk now, and I guess it brings me to the next question that I would actually like to learn more about, is like the structure of water.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've always stopped at the chemistry, cleans it out, adds some minerals, and I'm living my best life.
Most of us do, right?
Right? Yeah.
Like, okay, no contaminants.
No
we're
contaminants,
good.
which is huge, right? Because we want to get rid of those contaminants, and I've done shows on the contaminants in water in the first place.
Yeah.
What is the structure of water? What does it have to do with anything? Who cares about the structure of water?
Yeah, it's so important. I almost say it may be even, I mean, I think it's equally as important as the chemistry of the water. So we know about water that it is the source receiver of all information that it comes in contact with. Water is so powerful. It's so amazing. The more I start to study it, the more I realize how infinite it is and how we can never really understand it completely. But the physics of the water is impacted by all of the information that it's receiving. So everything it's come in contact with, that water, when it's going through the pipes and it's coming in contact with the pharmaceuticals and all of those contaminants, not only is the chemistry of the water affected, the physics of the water is affected. So that's why restructuring the water is so important, because we want to bioenergetically cleanse that information and then restore it back to its vibrant, alive state.
And how do you do that? Like, are we mixing water up in a bottle? What does structuring mean?
That's a great question, because there's a lot of talk about restructuring and some pseudoscience behind it too, and we're still learning a lot about it. There's still so much to understand, but I think when we are talking about structure, we want to look at the physics of what water looks like in nature. That's what we always look to, is like, what is the physics of what water is when it's coming down the glacial mountain stream? And then we can also look at, well, what does it look like when it comes through the pipes? It's different.
I can imagine.
Yeah. 60 degrees or 90 degrees. We want to make sure that the physics is closest to nature, obviously. So I love to use, there's a restructuring device that I love to use. It's UMH, and what it uses is the Fibonacci sacred geometry, where it's going through it's like golden mean, and it goes through this vortexing, where it's basically cleansing the information of what it's been. And it uses crystals. There's crystals in there. There's the vortex. And it's 24 karat gold inside, and it's beautiful. You can taste the difference of the water. The tension of the water is different.
Yeah,
the surface tension.
I can attest to that because when I was at your place, you gave me some of that water, and it was smooth.
Yeah.
And I was also urinating a lot.
Yeah.
Like way more than I ever had. Like I can drink a liter of water, and I know how much I'm going to pee.
Right.
But I was drinking 8-ounce cups.
Yeah.
And I was like
you kept
back
going
and forth. Which was really interesting to me because then I knew it was affecting me. I knew something was different with the water.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what it was smoother.
Yeah.
The tension of the water was just like a lot more flowy.
Yes.
So you're saying that there are devices out there that help restructure the water to basically how it's found in nature. As nature being like the barometer that we set when we do that for everything, right? It's like nature is the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
And are people improving when they're drinking this type of water?
This is why I became so passionate about water. I have been running a wellness clinic for 12 years. I've been in medicine since I was 15. And I used to get so stuck on, viruses, bacteria, miasms, sarcodes, like just trying to go so deep into all these things in the body. And one day I just realized, I was like, what if we just took people back to the basics, getting mineralized, getting hydrated, grounding, sunlight, movement, those kind of things? What would happen? So a lot of the clients that started coming in, I just started teaching about hydration, water, because I realized a lot of people don't even understand the basics. It's like, oh, if I drink enough water, that's going to equate to getting hydrated. No, it's not. So I brought them back to the basics of just getting hydrated, and I noticed that some of the people, like say with fibromyalgia, I had a client come in that she could barely pull the covers over her body. It hurt so bad to just pull the covers up at night. I just had her change her water, basically make sure that she was getting clean water, adding minerals to it, and then I just had her do a basic restructuring and walk on the beach every day. Actually, she did 3 days a week because that was all she could do. She came back a month later and she was in tears. I have her on a video, like, my life has changed. I'm 90% better.
From fibromyalgia, which we have a lot of medications for.
Yeah.
Wow.
But all she did was start to change her water and walk on the beach, which we know grounding reduces inflammation in the body too, and can help hydrate. Because this is a part of hydration. There's so much to hydration. It's not just the water we drink. We need the sunlight to activate it. We need the movement to activate it.
The grounding, the ions, everything. It's like, it's how are we in touch with nature and how's it cycling through us? Because that's the innate intelligence, our body knowing what to do when it's closest to its natural state. And it's like, we are so disconnected from that.
We're so disconnected. And so I just feel so passionate about trying to make wellness simple again, going back to the basics. I mean, water, I guess it's not that simple. There's so much to it, but we can make it simple. The simple things that we do, there's some simple steps we can do to literally change our lives, to optimize our health, to modulate our immune system. We're talking so much now with the COVID, all these fears of this virus. And I say, okay, we've got trillions of bacteria and viruses in our body at any given time. Should we be worried about the virus or the bioterrain, the host of this virus?
Yeah.
Right? What's more important, the virus or the bioterrain?
The terrain.
The terrain.
It's always been.
Okay, the terrain. But why is this not being talked about that much? It's like, this virus is so scary.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the virus that's scary. It's the terrain that we should be looking at.
Yeah, and we see the people who get most sick are the ones with the compromised terrains in the first place.
Of course, yeah.
Which is always interesting to me. So there's the popularity of these machines, like the Kangen machine. Is that known? Is it hydrogen water? Is it alkaline water? Is it restructuring the water?
Yeah.
What is the Kangen doing?
That's a great question. So this is a very controversial subject because people are very passionate.
They love,
about their Kangen.
Trust me. When I put up that, I did the whole water filter post, and people were like, "Love my Kangen, love my Berkey, love my Aquatrue," and I was like, "Whoa, people are."
And they're very dedicated, very passionate, and you're going to find a lot of friction there if you get, and a lot of misinformation. Okay, so here's the thing about the Kangen. The Kangen produces hydrogen gas. It's a byproduct. And hydrogen gas is one of the strongest immune modulators that we have. You're going to feel amazing if you put hydrogen gas in your water. You're going to have more energy. It's one of the ultimate antioxidants, immune modulators, and inflammation modulators as well. So, but with those Kangen machines, a lot of people, when they first get it, they're going to feel like their world changed because of the hydrogen. It's not that the alkaline water. There's no way that we can change our blood just with water. I mean, you'd have to drink, I don't know how many gallons, but enough gallons would probably kill you to change your blood pH. If you want to change your blood pH, just put some bicarbonates in your water. That'll change your blood pH. But drinking alkaline water is not going to change your blood pH. So it's not the alkaline water that's making people feel better. It's the hydrogen. And then those Kangen machines, what happens is if they're not cleansed because they get calcified, then the hydrogen gas that it's producing will diminish. And that's why over time, a lot of people be like, gosh, it worked so well. I felt so great, but now I'm not feeling as good from my Kangen.
So it's not producing the effects that it was before because you're saying that I guess a part of the machine is
They just
degrades?
need to cleanse
Okay, like
the calcification off of
I gotcha.
the probes, because then they're going to experience those benefits of the hydrogen that it's producing.
Cool. So can we just get hydrogen water at the supermarket, or is that
So you can buy hydrogen tablets. Yeah, I don't know, $40 hydrogen tablets. And what you want to do is take the hydrogen tablet, put it in about 8 ounces of water, and as soon as the water gets cloudy and that tablet dissolves, you drink it right away, because the hydrogen's going to be diminishing over time. So you want to make sure you get that full potency right away.
Yeah, they have those hydrogen waters that are out at Air One over here, and they say to drink it pretty fast.
Yes.
They said
You wanna
within,
drink
I
it
think,
fast.
10, 15 minutes
Yeah.
went from getting it. It's interesting because all these things have become trendier. Like 10 years ago, I don't remember anyone talking about hydrogen water.
No.
How do you feel about alkaline water overall then? Because it's not just Kangen, it's alkaline water or promoting that. It's like you'll see essential water.
Yeah.
Boom, alkaline water. You're saying that doesn't work?
Making alkaline water out of a machine, that's not necessarily going to be, because a lot of people are thinking they want to change the pH of their blood. That's not what's going to be making us feel better. Alkaline water in nature is already alkaline because of the minerals that are in it. So when I remineralize my water, when I take the RO water and I add minerals to it, it's going to become more structured. It's going to be a crystalline structure, and it's going to have an more alkaline. So that's what I'm looking for. Not an alkaline machine to alkalize it and then think I'm going to change my blood chemistry from that.
Right. And as a reminder, like just physiologically, we have all of these mechanisms in our body that protect us so we don't go over alkalized, so we don't become overacidic.
Yes.
Right? Because if that's the case, then if I drank, a liter of apple cider vinegar, and aside from making me really sick, if with that theory, then I'm just going to overacidify my blood. And the same thing goes the other way around. So because, our body's a little smart than to let our dumb ego trying to be like.
Our digestive system is already going to change that. Once it goes into your gut,
it's a protective mechanism.
Exactly.
Right. So I just think that we should all pay attention to that. Like, I always say that it's more of a ploy to think that, you're going to drink this water and your whole body is going to be alkaline, and cancer can't live in an alkaline environment, which is true, but also cancer in itself, and that's from a cell study, cancer in itself can't live in an overacidic environment or over alkaline environment. It has its own pH environment.
Yes.
So, and not only just cancer cells, neither any cells. You put any healthy cell in an over alkaline environment, is going to die.
Yeah.
So I want to like debunk that part of the trend, but
yeah.
I think the importance of what you're saying is like, take this water, have a good quality filter.
Yes.
The importance of minerals as far as helping with the structure and rehydration. And then if we can, structure our water. right? And not all of us can afford that
Right.
device, the one you were talking
Not
about.
everyone can afford it. So we're learning a lot about water. There's simple things that you can do. Look, if you're at home and you are like, I have no money to spend on water, then there's ways you can upgrade right now without spending a single dime. You can take your tap water, which, the city usually, there are regulations, which we know there's contaminants, but it's not usually going to kill you that day.
Yeah. Or
Right?
just over time, maybe.
Over time, right?
Yeah.
So you can take the tap water if you're saying, I don't want to spend any money at all. The first thing you can do is take the tap water, add sea salt. Sea salt is very inexpensive, and that has minerals in it. Add a tiny little pinch of sea salt just to structure the water, give it the minerals that you need. Put it in a cold, dark space for 7 to 8 hours, and then it'll begin to restructure itself there. Okay, that's like costing you nothing except maybe a couple dollars for sea salt. We're not talking about table salt. We're talking about Celtic sea salt.
Okay.
You can start with that. If you're willing to spend a little money on an RO system, I would say the Aquatrue is an amazing one because it doesn't have the holding tank. And so you can get some beautiful water there, or have it delivered to your house. How much does that cost a month to have clean water delivered?
Yeah.
Not a lot, right?
Yeah. Are there certain brands where they should be getting it from, or like you're talking about Mountain Spring water?
They're local mountain spring water.
Oh,
like here
okay.
in San Diego, ours is Palomar Mountain Spring water.
Okay.
Arrowhead Mountain Spring water. Get
Mountain
a
Valley.
Mountain Valley, exactly.
Okay.
I love Mountain Valley, and that you can get those in the glass.
Yes,
as well.
which I love which I
it.
talk about all the time
Yeah.
about BPA.
Right, so you don't even have to invest all that money in a RO. Just have that sent to your house,
Okay.
and then you can add a little pinch of sea salt to that. Put it in the refrigerator to restructure it. Is that the best? No, but it's better. We're upgrading.
Yeah,
right?
each time. So now we
Yeah.
have like things that we can work up to.
Yes. And then see how you feel in your body. And as far as like hydrating as well, I really want to stress it's not just about how much water you drink or what kind of water you drink. It's what's happening to the water when it goes into your body. What's your microbiome like? Are you moving? Because if we're moving the lymphatic system, walking, we need to move to get it into the tissue. We need to ground to the earth because we're bioelectrical beings, right? If we don't have that current, we always talk about we need electrolytes because we need that current flowing through to get everything activated, the sunlight to activate it. So sunlight, movement, grounding, and trace minerals, trace elements, and then getting bicarbonate salts. That's going to be game changer for hydration.
I love that. So again, so we understand, hydration is just not drinking water and sitting in your car in traffic.
No.
True hydration is sort of like a ritual, a process, right?
Yes.
You're drinking, but you have to move. You got to be
Yeah.
outside, put your feet on the ground, get the sun. One of the best things is like you talked about our phone, we plug it in, but like
Yeah.
this charges us up.
Why is it called a cell phone? Because
Yeah.
they're cells of the phone, right? But we forget to plug ourselves in to the earth. Go for a walk on the beach. Why did my fibromyalgia patient feel so good after a month of coming back? Because she was getting hydrated and plugging herself into the earth so that now that she's hydrated, everything can be activated through the earth's magnetic field in her body. And she was getting charged. Because our cells have innate intelligence, just like you said before. They know exactly what to do. They know when apoptosis is supposed to take place. They know how to cleanse themselves, cell autophagy. It knows everything that it needs to do. But the problem that's getting in the way is cellular communication. When these cells are not able to communicate, that's when we have problems. And dehydration and lack of that electrical charge is causing the cells not to be able to talk to each other.
So that charge is in a way activating that intelligence.
Yes.
So it works optimally. So these
Yes.
cells talk to each other and they go, "Hey, you don't look too good.
Right. You're
You
not
gotta
looking
die
so
today.
good." Exactly.
We got to take care of the whole organism.
Yes.
You need to split up and create a
Yes.
daughter." Okay.
You
now
need to
I'm
multiply. You're
getting it.
looking
You
good,
need to multiply.
girl.
You're looking good. I got you. So activating that. So I think it's really important. Like, and this is in line with everything I say. Tell people myself. Go outside. Take off your shoes.
Yeah.
Find that time every single day. I love that. Now, what is the importance of like just I guess this is in line with like staying youthful too, right? Like
Yeah.
recharging ourselves, staying hydrated, glowing, giving off that vibrancy, which you do give off. I know I'm going to tell everyone one of your secrets actually.
Okay. Oh shoot.
And it's like getting in touch with that inner child,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like enjoying that time, play, right? Like,
Yes.
so how important is that? Because I guess you painted the picture of like hydration in its role in overall health,
Yeah.
but how is that element right there of play and connecting to yourself deeper? How does that play a role in overall health too? Is it a big pillar?
Huge. I call true modern I have these I'm the modern wellness advocate. And one of the pillars I say is creative playtime. If you don't have creative playtime, I don't believe you're going to be optimally healthy. We need to play. That's moving and then getting our mind just activated, excited. Like what were we doing when you were at my house? We're jumping on the trampoline, laughing.
Right, for sure.
Moving our bodies. What else did we do? We went to the beach and we were looking at the crabs and just looking at the ocean and being that like childlike play again where we're observing everything for the first time. What did you feel when you were doing that?
No, hyper presence and just at peace.
Yeah.
Like a true peace, like
Yeah.
not projecting to the future. And that was very magical to get back to that place.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what you're saying, right? Like that exploration, like seeing things through like your first time
Yes.
is powerful.
For example, you're sitting in traffic and you're like, you know where you're going, every little stop, and we can just get in our brains and think like, okay, when am I going to get there? But just being able to sit in your car and observe like the other cars around, the sunset, maybe look at the birds or whatever's around, like you're seeing it for the very first time, can change everything. And then that can change the biochemistry of your body. Our thoughts, our mind literally has the power to change our biochemistry. And we talked about on my show, when you're on my show, we were talking about how stress is the ultimate number one aging.
The number one factor for cellular aging.
Number one factor for cellular aging. And so if we can literally get into our minds and change our perception, we are able to, that's the best regenerative medicine right there. It's one of the pillars.
And it's a shift that we can make. It's a choice.
It's a choice. It's
Right.
all the way we see everything. So when I say creative playtime, I mean, even when you're in traffic, just playing with like your thoughts, like, hey, what's that? Oh my gosh, what's that bird doing? Is he talking to another bird? Because if you notice, like, you'll just look at animals and you'll observe and you'll see, gosh, that bird's talking to that bird, and what did they do?
Yeah, because when we were kids, we did that.
Yeah.
But we lost touch of that as
We've
adults,
lost
right?
touch.
Oh, that's silly. Why would I pay attention to those birds?
Right.
Right. But the importance there is being truly present and coming back with that explorative eye and seeing the world. New picture. Like, therefore, when you're seeing the world, it's a new painting every day.
Yeah.
It's like you're at the museum, you're like, oh wow, look at this painting. This is the painting of the day today.
Yeah.
And we
No
can do that.
sunset's the same.
Yeah,
Every
no sunset's the same.
different. I mean, yeah. So I think one of the most powerful pillars to modern wellness is to be able to set aside time for creative playtime. I have trampolines in my house. I have a tree house. I've got balance beams. Just, different things in my house
DJ
to remind
booth.
me. I've got a DJ.
Right? A garden to just hang out in. You had ducks.
Singing bowls.
Singing bowls. You
little
have
ducks.
everything. Yeah, you have a little surfboard, balancing beam. So regardless, I know what you're saying, but like you've made your space. It was conducive to that.
Yes.
So maybe we can just get like whatever we used to love when we were young. A trampoline, a small little trampoline's $100.
Yeah.
$80, $100. Jump on it before you go to work, or jump on it before you make your call.
Getting that lymphatic moving. Okay, now we're activating hydration. All right, now that water is going to start working for me. It's not just going to sit in my stomach and then pee it out. It's like, now let's get into the tissue.
So how about this for a schedule? Wake up, drink a liter of clean water with remineralized, hopefully restructured, going outside for a little morning ritual or meditation barefoot,
Oh, yes.
getting that sun,
Yes.
and then jumping on the trampoline,
Yes.
and then getting ready for work.
That is
Right?
supreme.
Won't that set you up for the day?
That would set you up for the day.
I love that. And I love how you truly do live that. You stay hydrated, and that's part of your life. So you have this podcast, Hydration Podcast.
Yeah.
I was on it.
Yes.
And we spoke for like an hour and a half.
It was
a
so much
long
fun.
one. And what is it like? Is there a theme for everything? Like every show, is it based on hydration, or is it just like like what hydration means to each person. Just like what can we expect out of your show? Because it's
Yeah.
going to be a really good one. You have a lot of really good guests that I know of, so I can't
Thank
wait.
you. Well, just like we've talked about since I've been sitting here, there's so many aspects to hydration. Sunlight, grounding, the minerals, the type of water, the type of machines, the apparatus. There's so much. We could have 1,000 shows and never get to the end of it. You know what I mean? It's infinite. And since our body is over 98% water molecules, I think it's something we should talk about. And when I was looking into hydration, I was looking at podcasts and I kept typing in hydrate and I didn't really see anything. And I said, there's a really untapped market here. The people need to know about hydration, and we don't want to sell stories. We need science. I need to know hard science. I'm sick of just hearing stories and these esoteric things and then thinking, I mean, they're great too, but I think we need a balance of both. The experience along with backed by science too, right? So I have a lot of scientists that are coming on it, doctors,
just experts in their field.
Experts in the field, so we can understand it better because it's such an important topic. We know that all dehydration is related to inflammation and all inflammation is related to disease, right? So you do some deductive reasoning and you can realize that, being hydrated is important.
It is a pillar of health. It was my first post I've ever done on Instagram. So I know, and I'm there with you. So we could check that out. When's it going to come out?
The Hydrate podcast launches May 15th.
Okay.
So that's on Friday.
Okay, that's Friday. And for you, how do people find you? Do you have a website?
Yes, so it's tracyduhs.com, pay your dues, but it's spelled D-U-H-S, like Harry. D-U-H-S. tracyduhs.com, and then on Instagram it's just Tracy Duhs as well. And
you do retreats?
I do retreats in San Diego. I have a wellness center, the Sanctuary Wellness Experience, and that's where we have people come for 3 days. They can come and spend on our property. We have 8 private suites. You can come stay there for 3 days, get ultimately hydrated, peptide therapy, hydration therapy, relaxation therapy, walk
jumping on
the
trampolines.
beach, jump on trampolines. Yeah. I mean, it's called the Come Alive Retreat because you will come alive again.
100%. I mean, for the amount of time that I spent there, and I didn't do the retreat. We just hung out and,
you got a little taste of the retreat.
I got a taste of the retreat, and you have brilliant minds there. And yeah, like I felt alive. Yeah. I felt alive, elixirs, and it's just beautiful. So we can do that. Everyone go check Tracy out. I wanted to cover so much more. I mean, I think that you have an incredible story that we need to know about. So let's next show.
Yeah.
Whenever you want to come down, it's so empowering. Maybe we should even start it with that. But I really want to talk about water. So when you come on, will you tell us all about your amazing story, life story?
I would love to.
I think it's it's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for coming on, teaching us about water, the steps that we can take, and anything else that we want to add on the show notes, we will.
Okay.
And water it is. We stay healthy, we stay hydrated, vibrant, get outside, take off the shoes, get the sun. All that stuff, and make sure you make time for that play.
Make time for play.
Make sure you're young at heart. Get in touch with that innocence.
Let's go jump now.
There you go. Amen. All right. All right, what an awesome conversation with Tracy, the water queen, the water princess, the god of all things water. Anyway, thank you for joining. Thank you for rating, reviewing, subscribing. Check out next week's show. It's going to be on fire. I love you all, and have a wonderful, wonderful week.